Ever felt like there was more to a Minecraft world than meets the eye? And that's the vibe I've been getting from mine recently. Sit back and relax as I take you back to a decamillennium ago. I'm narrator Aaron, and this is the legend of Aranor. There was once a place where the worlds were not separate, where the living could speak with the dead, where beings from distant realms could walk beneath the same sky, and where every path, every river, every forest eventually led back to one place, Aranor. In the ancient tongue, Aranor meant where spirits meet, and at the very heart of Aranor stood a tree. Not a tree like the ones we know today. The tree was enormous. Its roots stretched deep beneath the earth, and its branches reached towards the heavens. They called it the Tree of Life. The people of Aranor believed it had been given to them by the stars above. But the tree's greatest gift wasn't its fruit, nor its wood. It wasn't even the life that grew around it. The tree connected worlds, and within its roots lived spirits. The souls of those who had passed, the memories of civilizations long forgotten, and for generations the people of Aranor lived alongside them. The living and the dead were never truly separated. They were simply neighbors, and perhaps that was what made Aranor so beautiful. It wasn't a kingdom built by conquest. It was a kingdom built around a gift. But gifts have a way of revealing who we really are, and eventually, someone wanted more. Long before Aranor became what it was, beings arrived from a distant realm known as the Aether. They were unlike the people who lived there. The villagers called them the Aetherin, and in those early days, the name meant something noble: protector. The Aetherin had been entrusted with guarding the Tree of Life. They watched over its roots, they protected the people who came to it, and they ensured that the spirits within the tree were left in peace. For a time, that is. Everything was perfect. But generations passed and protection slowly became possession. The Aetherin began to believe that they had been chosen to protect the tree. They had been chosen to own it. They wanted more of its power, more of its blessings, more of the life that it could give. And eventually, the meaning of their name changed. Aetherin no longer meant protectors. It came to mean those who claim. They surrounded the tree, they controlled who could approach it, and they began demanding offerings in exchange for its blessings. At first they asked for food, then possessions, then loyalty, until eventually they demanded something far greater: a sacrifice. The Aetherin claimed that the tree demanded a life before it could grant its greatest gifts. But the spirits knew the truth. The tree had never asked for blood. The Aetherin had simply become greedy, and the spirits within the tree began to grow restless. For 1,000 years they endured it. They watched their gift being twisted, they watched their people suffer, and eventually, the spirits called upon something ancient, something that had existed long before the tree itself. Deep beneath the earth, forgotten civilizations had built enormous cities. And within those depths lived the Ancients. The spirits awakened them and begged them for help. The Ancients answered. They rose from beneath the earth and marched upon Aranor. The Aetherin met them with weapons of their own, and then began a war that would last a century. The sound of steel echoed through their kingdom. Swords clashed, shields collided, and the earth trembled beneath the feet of armies. Buildings that had stood for generations collapsed, forests burned, and the ground itself was scarred. The spirits watched in horror because they called upon the Ancients to save Aranor. But instead, they had started a war, 100 years of bloodshed, 100 years of people watching their home slowly disappear. And the villagers were caught in between it all. They had never asked for the war. They had never wanted the tree's power. They simply wanted to live. After endless battles befell them, after rivers of innocent blood spilled, the villagers had enough. So they left the one place they had ever known, Families packed what little they could carry. Parents took their children by their hand. People looked back at Aranor one final time and walked away. They scattered in every direction. Some climbed into the snowy mountains. Some settled across endless plains. Some found warmth beneath the acacia trees. Others wandered into deserts, forests, jungles, and places they had never seen before. They became the ancestors of the villagers that would one day cover the world, the villagers that we know today. But they carried almost nothing with them. Not their kingdoms, not their tree, not their spirits, only their memories. And even those would eventually fade. The war continued, but eventually it reached the ears of something far greater. Something the people of Aranor called the Elden Celestial. The Elden Celestial had watched over Aranor from beyond the stars. It had watched humanity receive a gift. It had watched the gift become corrupted. And now it watched the world tear itself apart because of it. The Celestial grew weary, not because humanity had made a mistake, but because humanity had forgotten what the gift was for. So it made a decision. The Tree of Life would remain, but its power would be stripped away. The connection between worlds would be severed. The spirits would no longer walk among the living, and mankind would no longer receive the gifts of the heavens, until they proved themselves worthy, that is. And so the Elden Celestial spoke its final decree. You were given a gift, and you turned it into a throne. You were given life, and you demanded more. You were given the spirits, and you disturbed their peace. No more. When you have learned what it means to receive without claiming, only then shall the heavens open again. And the tree fell silent. The world became separated. The aether became distant. The ancient disappeared beneath the earth, and the spirits crossed over to the other side, forevermore. For the first time in the history of existence, Aranor was alone. And perhaps the saddest part is that humanity forgot. Generations passed. The descendants of Aranor built new homes, new villages, new lives. They looked toward the sky without knowing what had once lived beyond it. They walked towards forests without knowing that spirits had once walked beside them. They saw the stars, without knowing that the stars had once given them a gift. And eventually, even Aranor itself disappeared. Its buildings crumbled, its roads were swallowed by nature, its history became myth, and the Tree of Life stood alone, waiting. But the worlds were not empty. Something new had appeared, a race unlike anything that had come before. They weren't even born in the aether. They weren't created by the ancients. They weren't spirits. They were something the old world had never known. They could cross between worlds. They could enter places that no other being could reach. They could create. They could destroy. They could reshape the land beneath their feet. And they called themselves players. They didn't know about Aranor. They didn't know about the Aetherin. They didn't know about the war. They didn't know about the tree. To them, each world was simply another world. Until one day, one player loaded into a world. He opened his eyes and found himself standing upon a vast empty landscape. He looked around. He saw mountains, trees, grass, nothing unusual. Nothing that suggested what had happened there. He didn't know that beneath his feet, armies had once fought. He didn't know that the earth had once shaken beneath a century of war. He didn't know that the people standing in villages across the world were descendants of those who had fled this place. And he certainly didn't know that the Tree of Life had once stood there. Now let me tell you, gentlemen and ladies, players weren't perfect either. Some were good. They would protect innocent villagers from monster attacks. They would repair homes that need fixing. They would provide villagers with necessary resources for them to flourish. And some were evil. Torment sent from the past, cast upon the poor villagers as retribution for their ancestors' crimes, for leaving Eleanor in the time of its greatest need. But players had something other races did not. Players built monuments as large as mountains. They built kingdoms as vast as the Great Plains. They built roads and pathways connecting all these structures. They made a world as vast as oceans, and they considered these divine feats mere projects. Now allow me to tell you about the player who stumbled upon Aranor without knowing the story behind it. The player's name was Aaron, and without knowing it, Aaron had returned to Aranor. He began to build a house, a path, a garden, a forest, nothing extraordinary, just the simple things a player does when they find a new world. And with every block he placed, something forgotten began to return. A path appeared where an ancient road had once existed. Trees began growing where the old forest had died. Stone walls rose where buildings had once stood, and slowly, the land began to look alive again. Aaron didn't know why he felt drawn to this place. He didn't know why the landscape felt strangely familiar. He only knew that he wanted to build, and perhaps that's what the Elden Celestial had been waiting for. Not another king, not another warrior, not someone who wanted the power of the tree. Just someone willing to build, without asking what they would receive in return. Because maybe the test was never about becoming more powerful. Maybe it was about learning to create something beautiful, simply because it deserved to exist. And somewhere beneath the roots of the world, the tree of life still waited. Its branches were silent. Its spirits were gone. Its connection to the world had been severed for thousands of years. But perhaps, for the first time, something was changing. Because the world that had once been destroyed by greed was slowly being rebuilt by someone who knew nothing about it. Aranor had spent centuries waiting for its people to return. And when they finally did, they didn't arrive as kings. They didn't arrive as armies. They arrived as players. And maybe that's where the story truly begins. Because Aaron had no idea what he had stepped into. He didn't know that the land beneath him remembered. He didn't know that the tree was still alive. And he certainly didn't know that the world had been waiting for someone like him. So this is not the story of how Aaron found Aranor. It's the story of how Aranor found Aaron. Let me know if you enjoy these stories, because there are many more waiting to be told. And the story of Aranor doesn't end here, because maybe the Elden Celestial finally decided to bestow its grace upon mankind once again after a decamillennium. And for those who don't know what that means, a decamillennium is equivalent to 10,000 years. 10,000 years of evolution, good or bad, all led to this moment, where it waits for a clueless player to uncover it all. And if you're interested, come along with me. Subscribe, because it's about to get really crazy.